With the continuing development of solar power, air rights, solar rights, and even view rights are being closely examined by the court. A proposed tall building that blocks sunlight from a smaller existing building must be held to interfering with the smaller building's right to sunlight, especially if the smaller building is solar powered. Characteristics and ownership of real property. Characteristics of real estate. Real estate possesses seven basic characteristics that define its nature and affect its use. These characteristics fall into two broad categories: economic and physical. Economic characteristics. The economic characteristics of land affects its investment value. These four characteristics are scarcity, improvements, permanence of investment, and location, also called situs. Scarcity. Land is not usually considered a rare commodity, but only a quarter of the Earth's surface is dry land. The rest is water. The total available supply of land is not limitless, while a considerable amount of land remains unused or uninhabited. The supply in a given location or of a particular quality is generally considered limited. Improvements. Building an improvement on one parcel of land can affect the land's value and use, as well as that of neighbors' tracts and whole communities. For example, constructing a new shopping center or selecting a nuclear power site or toxic waste dump can dramatically shift land values in a large area. Permanence of investment. The capital and labor used to build an improvement represents a large fixed investment, although even a well built structure can be raised to make way for a new rebuilding. Improvements such as drainage, electricity, water, and sewage systems often remain. Location. This economic characteristic, sometimes called situs, does not directly refer to a geographic location, but rather to people, people's preferences for given areas. It is the unique quality of these preferences that result in different values for similar units. Location is the most important economic characteristic of land. Physical characteristics. Land has three main physical characteristics: immobility, indestructibility, and uniqueness. Immobility. It is true that some of the substances of land are removable and that photography may shift. Topography may shift. Nevertheless, the geographic location of any given parcel of land can never be changed. It is fixed or immobile. Indestructibility. Land is also indestructible. This permanence of land, coupled with the long term nature of most improvements, tends to stabilize investment in real estate. The fact that land is indestructible does not mean the fact that man made improvements on land depreciate and can become obsolete, which can dramatically reduce the land's value. Uniqueness. No two parcels of land are ever exactly the same. The characteristics of each property, no matter how small, differ from those of every other. At a minimum, all parcels differ geographically because each parcel has its own location. Ownership of real property. The memory tip is bundle of legal rights, which is disposition, enjoyment, exclusion, possession, and control. And when I was taking the class, the teacher told us to remember it as deep C, C as in cat. Traditionally, ownership of real property is described as carrying a bundle of legal rights. These rights include the right of possession, right to control the property within the framework of the law, right of enjoyment, that is, use the property as the owner wishes within the framework of the law, right of exclusion, to keep others from entering or using the property, and right of disposition, to sell, will, transfer, or otherwise dispose of or encumber the property. The concept of a bundle of rights comes from Old English law. In the Middle Ages, a seller transferred property by giving the purchaser a handful of earth or a bundle of bound sticks from a tree on the property, symbolizing the whole property. The purchaser, who accepts the bundle in the ceremony, became owner of the tree producing the sticks and the land to which the tree was attached. Because the right of ownership, like the stick, can be separated and individually transferred, the sticks became symbolic of those rights. Real property and personal property. Property may be classified as either real or personal. Personal property or personality is property that is movable and not as fixed to or associated with the land. Basically, personal property includes all property except real property. Chattels are items of personal property, including such tangibles as chairs, tables, clothing, money, bonds, and bank accounts. Trade fixtures are included in this category. Manufactured housing. Manufactured housing is defined as dwellings that are built outside and trucked to a building lot where they are installed or assembled. Manufactured housing includes modular, panelized, pre-cut, and mobile homes. However, the term mobile home usually refers to factory-built housing constructed before 1976. The distinction between real and personal property is not always obvious. Manufactured housing, for example, is generally considered personal property, that is, until it becomes permanently affixed to the land, at which point it becomes real property. Plants. Trees and crops generally fall into one of two of the following classes. Trees, perennials, shrubbery, and grasses that do not require annual cultivation are considered real estate. They attach to the land. The Latin term fructus naturalis is often used to describe them. Annual cultivated crops such as wheat, corn, vegetables, and fruit, also called implements, are generally considered personal property. As long as an annual crop is growing, it will stay with the real property unless other provisions are made in the sales contract. The Latin term fructus industrialis means the fruit of one effort. It is often used to describe them. When Illinois farmland is sold, it is customary for possession to be transferred to the buyer on March 1st because it falls after the last year's crops have been harvested and before the new crops are planted. Because of this standard date, no special provisions are required regarding the annual crops. However, when possession is transferred to the buyer on March 1st, it is also customary for the buyer to assume full payment of the current year's tax bill without proration. This is because the buyer will receive the full benefit of the new crop with that tax year for that tax year. If the sale is closed at another time during the year and before the crops are harvested, the sales contract should indicate whether the growing crops are included in the sales price. Sometimes, when the crop is included in the sale, the buyer reimburses the seller for crop-related costs already incurred, such as seed, planting, fertilizing, and spraying. As for farm lease, if an owner wishes to break a lease with the tenant, notification must be given by November 1st. This produces the least interference with the cycle of spring planting and fall harvesting. An item of real property can become personal property by severance. For example, a growing tree is real estate until the property cuts it down, severing it from the property. Similarly, an apple becomes personal property once it is picked from a tree, and a wheat crop becomes personal property once harvested. It also is possible to change personal property into real property through a process called annexation. For example, a landlord buys cement, stone, and sand. mixes them into concrete, and constructs a sidewalk across her land. This owner has effectively converted personal property, the cement, stones, and sand, into real property, a sidewalk. Licensees need to know whether property is real or personal for many reasons. An important distinction arises. For example, when the property is transferred from one owner to another, real property is conveyed by deed, while personal property is conveyed by a bill of sale. Classification of fixtures. In considering the difference between real and personal property, it is necessary to distinguish between a fixture and personal property. Fixtures. A fixture is personal property that has been affixed to the land or building that by law it becomes part of the real property. Almost any item that has been added as a permanent part of a building is considered a fixture. Legal test of a fixture. The primary test that is used to determine whether an item is a fixture or a personal property is a question of intent. Did the person who installed the item intend for it to remain permanently on the property or for it to be removable in the future? In determining intent, courts use the following three basic tests. Method of attachment. How permanent is the method of attachment? Can the item be removed without causing damage to the surrounding property? Adaptation to real estate. Is the item being used as real property or personal property? Agreement. Have the parties agreed in writing on whether the item is real or personal property? What does the contract say? Legal test of a fixture. Is the intent? How is it attached? The adaptation and the agreement. Although these tests may be simple, court decisions have occasionally been inconsistent. Property that appears to be permanently affixed sometimes has been ruled to be personal property, while property that seems removable has been ruled a fixture. It is important that an owner clarifies that what is to be sold with the real estate at the very beginning of the sales process. The written sales contract between the buyer and the seller should list articles included in the sale if any doubt exists as to whether they are personal property or fixtures. Trade fixtures. A special, a special category of fixtures includes property used in the course of business, an article owned by a tenant and attached to a rented space or building, or used in conducting a business is a trade fixture or chattel fixture. Trade fixtures differ from other fixtures in two ways. Fixtures belong to the owner of real estate, but trade fixtures are usually owned and installed by a tenant for the tenant's use. Fixtures are considered a permanent part of a building, but trade fixtures are removable. For example, a trade fixtures are bowling alleys, store shelves, bars, and restaurant equipment. Agricultural fixtures, such as chicken coops, tool sheds, are also included in this category. Trade fixtures must be removed on or before the last day of the lease term. The tenant is responsible for any damage caused by the removal of a trade fixture. Trade fixtures that are not removed become the real property of the landlord. Acquiring the property in this way is called a cession. Personal property that turns into real property does so by attachment. Laws affecting real estate. Licensees must have a clear and accurate understanding of the laws that affect real estate. There are seven sources of law that affect real estate. One is the U.S. Constitution, laws passed by Congress, rules of the regulatory agencies, state constitutions, state statutes, local ordinances, and common law. Specific areas important to the real estate practitioner includes the law of contract, General property law, law of agency, and the state's real estate license law. All of these will be discussed later in this book. Federal regulations such as environmental laws, as well as federal, state, and local tax laws, also play an important role in real estate transactions. Finally, state and local land use and zoning laws, as well as environmental regulations, also have a significant impact on the practice of real estate. Laws come from seven different sources. They are the U.S. Constitution, laws passed by Congress, rules of the regulatory agencies, state constitution, state statutes, local ordinances, and common laws, court decisions. A real estate practitioner can't be an expert in all of these areas of real estate. However, licensees should know and understand some basic principles. Perhaps most important is the ability to recognize which problem should be referred to a real estate attorney. Only attorneys are trained and licensed to give advice on matters of law. Under no circumstance may a real estate licensee act as an attorney unless the licensee is also licensed is also a licensed attorney representing a client, but only in that capacity. The purpose of real estate license law is to protect the public from fraud, dishonesty, and incompetence in real estate transactions. All 50 states, the District of Columbia, and all Canadian provinces have passed laws that require real estate practitioners to be licensed. Although state license laws are similar in many broad aspects, they may differ on key points. From the amount of education required for a license to appropriate approaches for handling agency relationships. The practice of real estate in Illinois is governed by the Real Estate License Act of 2000, also called the Act, as amended in 2020, and, and rules established by the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations. Other laws affecting real estate in Illinois may be found throughout the Illinois compliant statutes, but many of those addressing real property are in 165 Illinois CS. Rules and regulations that govern the industry are established by a joint committee, with procedures governed by the provision of the Illinois Administrative Procedure Act. Summary. Although most people think of land as the surface of the earth, land includes the earth's surface, the mineral disposition under the earth, and the air above the earth. The term real estate further expands this definition to include all natural and man-made improvements attached to the land. The term real property is used to describe real estate plus the bundle of legal rights associated with its ownership. A buyer of real estate purchases from the seller the legal rights to use the land in certain ways, going back to the Old English transfer of a bundle of rights. The various rights to the same parcel of real estate may be owned and controlled by different parties. For example, one person may own the surface rights, one the air rights, and one the subsurface rights. Property that does not fit the description of real estate is classified as personal property, also called chattels. When articles of personal property are attached to real estate, they may become fixtures, and as such are considered part of the real estate. However, personal property attached to real property by a tenant for business purposes is called a trade fixture, and it remains personal property, transportable by the tenant at the end of the lease. The special nature of land as an investment is apparent in both its economic and physical characteristics. The economic characteristics are scarcity, improvement, permanence of investment, and location. The physical characteristics of lands of are that it is immobile, indestructible, and unique. Even the simplest real estate transactions reflect a complex body of law. Those laws include the U.S. Constitution, laws passed by Congress, rules of the regulatory agencies, state constitution, state statutes, local ordinances, and common law court decision. All 50 states, the District of Columbia, and all Canadian provinces have some type of licensing requirement for real estate practitioners. Real estate licensees have an obligation to be familiar with the real estate laws and licensing requirements in the states in which they are practiced. And that is all for Unit 2. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And like always, I'm sorry for all the studying or background noise. I don't know why I've been studying today this whole day, but I hope you guys enjoy the video and just give a big thumbs up. And we're all here for the same thing, to pass the test. So wish you guys luck, and let's do all the other chapters. And God loves you a lot.